Okay, yes.
Sound test. Ooh, that's loud.
Good. No.
Good thing we did it.
Absolutely, yes, but don't make it too
Sound test mark 2. Can everybody hear me fine and I'm not too loud for the people in the front? I'm getting nods in the back. That's excellent. Welcome, everybody, to historic Minster for this next edition of our Heritage Talk series, part of our 600th anniversary here at Minster. I'm James. I'm the Heritage Manager at the Minster, and I'm really delighted to be able to welcome you to this talk. Many of you will have been to these talks before, and if you have been, then welcome back. For any of you who are new to these Heritage Talks, this is something that runs every other week on Fridays, lunchtime, same place, here in the chancel of Minster, where we provide a platform for some of the most passionate people about history in Hull to be able to share their stories with you, whether that be academics, historians, lecturers, social media historians, or just local people with the real passion for history who want to share it with you. And I'm delighted to welcome back Helen for a talk here. Her last 2 Heritage Talks here have been quite interesting. 2 talks ago, her audience was smoked out by the Albert Dock fire over the summertime, if anyone remembers that. So this attendance is quite welcoming compared to what we had on that day. And just after that, she saved our bacon when one of our heritage speakers didn't come up, or didn't show up, and did a fantastic 25-minute spiel, which was really well received. So hopefully a return to normalcy today. I will hand the mic over to Helen because you're here to listen to her and not myself. So without further ado, give a warm welcome to the speaker, Helen Good.
If any of you were at my epic, no-notes, impromptu description of the Battle of Marston Moor, I have to tell you that when I went back, I discovered that about 50% of what I said was wrong. But it honestly wasn't my fault. I was having to remember a lecture of 6 years back. Right. This is a Star Chamber case, absolutely newly discovered by me a matter of months ago. And you are the first people in the world to hear about it. Except, of course, that I've been talking to people about it non-stop ever since I found it. But this is its first formal appearance on any stage. Now, this is my project homepage, hosted by the University of Houston in Texas, because I'm the director of the Star Chamber project. That's nowhere near as grand as it sounds. It is an unpaid post. The project is unfunded. Now, there are 2 ways of telling history. One is like being a restaurant. You produce the dish, whether it's a burger or boeuf bourguignon, cooked and plated and very tasty. Or you give a cookery show, laying out the ingredients and demonstrating how to put them together. For today's talk, I'm going to use the second method, and I'm going to show you how I came to it myself, so we will be retracing my steps. This may not be to your taste, but it is to mine. First, the Court of Star Chamber was an equity court, that is, a court of justice, not a court of law. It sat in term times on Wednesday and Friday afternoons, and the judges were the Queen's Privy Council. The court was intended to remedy maladministration in the various counties, where you would find corrupt juries, oppressive magistrates, and no remedy against assault, fraud, blackmail, or perjury. It was a very popular court amongst those who wanted to escalate a quarrel with their neighbour. All the cases are local history. So I've had created by a 15-year-old boy a map of the cases, really, get yourself a 15-year-old boy. An intelligent 15-year-old can achieve wonders. Now, the one in The Hague, out of The Hague in the Netherlands, is a piracy case. That's why it's sitting out there in the middle of the streets. Now, you enlarge it, and you find all these cases in all these villages, and the East Riding of Yorkshire is not the most crowded. Lincolnshire, they never stopped going to Star Chamber. You separate the pins, and here is today's case in Tunstall, on the coast of the East Riding. And the thing beside it provides a link to everything we know about the case. Only in this case it doesn't, because all the transcriptions that I've done aren't yet on the Houston website. So you'll be disappointed if you click that link. Now, this is the case. John Constable. Those of you who understand these things will realize that what we have here are two separate references. There may be more, but I don't think so. The 100,000 odd documents of Star Chamber Elizabeth are in total chaos. My index is based on a 1740 hand list, which is the best available. Now, these cases have started to appear in Discovery, which is what they're calling the National Archives catalogue this week. The data is mostly lifted from my website, from this website. But it is confused by a really bad card index made in the 1950s, which is occasionally right, but mostly not. And, all right, I'm having a terrible time with the National Archives because they think they're right and I think they're wrong. Anyway. The thing about the date is irrelevant, but I put it up there because some people like that sort of thing. This is two photographs of the top of a bill of complaint. You've got to photograph it twice because it's too wide. You can do a panoramic view, but my hands aren't steady enough. Then, as you can see by zooming in on it, it's the same photograph. Zooming in on it, you can get something that, if you read secretary hand, is actually legible. You may not believe that it's legible, but truly it is, if you read secretary hand most days, which I do. All of them start, they're in the form of a petition, and they all start to the Queen's most excellent Majesty, which you can see at the top there. In most humble wise complaineth and showeth unto your excellent Majesty your humble subject and suppliant, John Constable of Burton Constable, in the county of York, Knight. Now, this petition includes an enormous amount of grovelling. But this is a very formulaic grovelling, and it doesn't necessarily mean what it says. I mean, John Constable has never shown himself to be a humble subject. Anyway, here is the story. And I'm not going to read out the bill because It's a little tedious. There's a lot of it. But the nub is this. On the last day of February, now last past, which is probably 1572, a Flemish ship, fortuned to be driven upon the sands at Tunstall in the county of York, carrying Fleming's goods and Flemish and Scots merchants and mariners. Okay? They used themselves so lewdly and suspiciously, both in making all haste full sale of all their merchandise at very low value, and by wandering abroad in the country at unseasonable times by night, like men that meant to steal away privily. And the honest inhabitants of Tunstall began to have these Flemings and Scots in great jealousy and vehement suspicion of falsehood and evil dealing. Robert Wrightingson, my servant, told me this, as I am a justice of the peace, and I was then in the city of York. I informed your Majesty's Council established in the north parts of the whole matter, and the Council commanded me to have the ship and cargo put in safe keeping, and to commit the crew, Flemings and Scots, being the merchants and mariners, to the jail in the town of Hedden. Whereupon I caused 4 of the merchants and mariners, 3 Flemings and a Scot, to be arrested and carried towards the jail at Hedden. Now so it is, and it like your most excellent Majesty, that one Richard Palms of Tunstall, and one Richard Palms the younger, Francis Leeds, William Burfoot, Thomas Hill, William Townley, William Wilson, Thomas Budd, Michael Bowlby Clark, and John Dorney, accompanied with divers lewd, riotous, and evil persons, to your said subject totally unknown, being in all to a number of 10 persons or thereabouts, arrayed and furnished in warlike manner, with divers and sundry sorts and kinds of warlike weapons, as well invasive as defensive, that is to say, with swords, bucklers, daggers, long pikes, staves and bills, and such like. They set upon Rafe Outchon, the officer, on the road, and rescued and took from him the Flemings and Scot. Richard Palms the elder then saying vauntingly and very contemptuously that he had given the said Flemings and Scots his hand and faith that he would defend them and their goods. And so they conveyed them home to the house of the said Richard Palms at Tunstall aforesaid, and to other secret places, in great contempt of your Majesty's laws and statutes, and in disturbance of your Majesty's peace. And as all bills, it ends, and your said subject shall daily pray for the long preservation of your excellent Majesty. Right. Fairly clear cut. But this is a Star Chamber bill of complaint, made up in equal parts of lies and bad temper. You need to hear both sides. There are, in fact, 3 answers to this bill. One a single answer, one a joint answer, but they both, the two of them use the same lawyer, and they both say the same things, that the bill of complaint is false and untrue, devised only of malice and evil will, without any just cause or occasion, of purpose to put these defendants dwelling in Yorkshire, far distant from London, and being but poor men, as well to great labour and travail, as also to great trouble, charges, and expenses, to their great hindrance and impoverishment. Further, they all say that they did nothing that they were accused of in the bill, and they prayed to be dismissed with their reasonable costs and charges in that behalf wrongfully sustained. There you are. That doesn't give us any new information except that it's fairly robust. However, there is a third answer. And this is the answer of Richard Palms. No, where is it? There it is. It's, as you can see, it's a bit of a mess, but it is complete. There we are. There's the bottom bit, and I lined it all up and photographed it, and then I discovered that I was out by 3 lines. However, you always discover that when you get back to Hull. So I had to do a little bit of mental gymnastics, but I got it all in the end. Interestingly, the signature at the bottom is the signature of the lawyer, and that's William Hilliard. Interesting later. Now, the answer. Oh yes, most of my photographs you get a decent picture of my thumb. This is the story that is told in the answer. The 25th day of February, last past, there came on the seashore of Waxham, within the township of Tunstall. Does anybody know where Waxham is? Oh, goody. It's a real place then. Yes. Lovely. A vessel and sundry men, some being Flemings and some Scots, as appeared by their own confessions, who upon demand made by this defendant answered that the ship was called the Blackmore, that's spelt B-L-A-C-K, new word, M-O-R-E, and belonged to Cornelius Martinson, dwelling at Flushing, and that their burden was corn. The owner whereof was Patrick Minges, I think that's how you pronounce it, a Scot, and that's the owner of the corn, was Patrick, and that their voyage was intended to Flushing, and were driven on that coast by the extremity of weather. Now, this is a first-hand account. Well, nearly a first-hand account, because he actually talked to the Scots and Flemings who were there. It's much more useful than the bill of complaint, which is by a man who all this time was in York. We have the owners of the ship and the cargo, and the voyage was to Flushing. It may have come from Scotland with the corn, although we don't have much evidence for corn export from Scotland at this time. I would think it more likely that Minges had bought and was shipping English corn, but we don't know. Back to this answer. Palms went and declared the matter to Christopher Hilliard of Winstead, Justice of the Peace, who commanded him to stay and keep the Scots and Flemings so that they might be forthcoming when sent for. And Palms signed a bond on the 29th of February, so it was a leap year, so probably 72. He signed a bond on the 29th of February to comply, and he lodged the crew in the houses of various men in Tunstall until the 5th day of March, when Rafe Auction, with others, came to the house of Matthew Pinder of Tunstall, and finding one of the strangers, being a Scot, sick in his bed, caused him, apparently without a warrant, to arise and go with them to the jail of Hedden. And Palms, who was worried about his bond, or so he says, went with 2 others in quiet and peaceable manner, being arrayed only with their usual weapons, and met with Auction and the said Scot. There was then an amicable discussion, and Orchan allowed his prisoner to be taken back to Tunstall. A very different story. Now, usual weapons are a lot more than we normally carry. It differs according to where and who you are. In Northumberland, usual weapons equals armed to the teeth. A gentleman would not ride from Hull to Beverley without his sword and a couple of armed servants. It was not, wasn't a safe place, wasn't Elizabethan England? Now, the Scots and Flemings were surrendered on the 28th of March to a commission appointed by the Council of the North, which was composed of Christopher Hilliard and Master Thornton of Hull and Master Clarkson of Hull, and it probably sat in Hull. No mention of Constable, but Hilliard is up there with the others. Thornton and Clarkson, being aldermen of Hull, would also be justices of peace. One of the Scots was still sick and was delivered to Master Clarkson in Hull a few days later. Now, I know Thornton and Clarkson very well. Both were substantial merchants, both were 3 times Mayor of Hull, and both were good Protestants and in high favour with the Council of the North. Sir John Constable was none of these things. If this answer that I've just been going through has any truth in it, then everything had been settled, finished and done with until Constable stirred the pot by taking it to Star Chamber. I mean, I think he went home cross. And he stayed cross, and he just got crosser, and then eventually he made a Star Chamber matter of it. Right. The next thing is the witness statements. Now, witness statements in Star Chamber come in 2 detached parts, which is great if they're not in the same reference. You know, you can spend a lot of time looking for the questions or looking for the answers. And there's no saying that you'll actually find them. An awful lot's been lost. Here are some of the interrogatories, the questions. Now, these are always very neatly written because someone has to read them out, and it won't be the person who wrote them. So, interrogatories are a great source. And these, both sides put in interrogatories, and these are Sir John Constable's. The defence questions don't appear to exist. Either they were never issued or they've been lost. Now, here is the top one, number 3. Item: did not certain persons that were in a pink or ship that was cast on land at Tunstall about the time mentioned in the bill come to land and haunted or used the house of Richard Palms the elder, mentioned in the bill, as well by night at unseasonable times as by day? The one thing about Elizabethan questions are they're always leading questions. I mean, leading the witness was what you did. Did you lie in wait with intent to murder John Cuthnell? And, you know, answer, yea or no. And it was, nowadays, none of these questions would be allowed. What is interesting, though, is the mention of a pink as the ship. Now, this is a lot later. This is early 18th century. There's a 3-masted ship on the left. No. Yeah, left. And the other ship is said to be a pink. with or without an E on the end. The Elizabethans didn't really care. It was small but capacious. It was very good at carrying cargoes. It had a flattish bottom, which meant it could be beached or used shallow rivers or creeks. It was a very useful vessel, and they did cross the North Sea in them, but it was very often used for coastal trade. Here are the answers to those questions. They are dated 15th of November, Anno Elizabeth 14, which is 1572, right at the end of 1570, right at the end of that regnal year. Regnal years are, in fact, like most things, perfectly easy once you've grasped the concept and made your own lookup chart. Every decent Elizabethan historian, certainly, I mean, I've got the Julian calendar, because at this stage we're still on the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar, the regnal year, and the mayoral year. And they're all different, but if I've got one of them, I can look across and find the others. And once you've got your chart, easy. As Star Chamber answers go, these are not badly written. What happened is that the questions are put to the witnesses exactly as written, and then a clerk writes down the answer. So it's a paraphrase of what was said. And at the end, the clerk reads out, he can read it, it's his writing. The clerk reads out the statement, and the witness either signs it, you'll see there's a signature here for Bolton. He either signs it or he makes a mark, or it's witness that he accepted it. This is Michael Bolton. Let's go back to him. This is Michael Bolton, clerk. Here you go. Michael Bolton, clerk of Burton Pidsey. I'm very pleased with that. This is one of the reasons why these cases always ought to be read by someone with local knowledge, because I doubt if anybody working in London would have a clue that that said Pidsey, but it does. Right. Off we go. Oh, we've come to the end. Good. Now, the problem for Constable with these witness statements is that these are his chosen witnesses and his chosen questions, and they say, I don't know anything. And to some, they can say nothing, for they were not present at the time. And all the way through, as far as I can tell, all of them, there isn't a single positive piece of evidence in the lot. And I think this is the point at which Constable gave up. It would seem logical, and that would be why there aren't any defence questions. Because they never bothered with it. I'll leave you with that. You may as well admire. I don't want you to think that being an Elizabethan historian is easy. You know? We have our uses. We people who can read this rubbish. Okay. Now, my thoughts on this. I think there must have been a dispute between Constable and Hilliard. The defendant's lawyer, Palm's lawyer, is William Hilliard, who I believe was Christopher Hilliard's brother. He was a lawyer in Beverley. Hilliard was a Protestant. He subscribed to the stipend of the Puritan preacher in Hull. He actually owned property in Hull as well as Winstead. Sir John Constable was not an open Catholic, or he couldn't have been a justice of the peace. He must have sworn to the supremacy, to the Queen's supremacy over the Church of England. No Pope. This was not uncommon. What you would find in a prominent family like this, you would find one or two people who went to church and who signed up, and the rest of the family would maintain the Catholic tradition. And I think that's what is happening here. It got a bit more iffy after 1581 when Campion's mission arrived, and the English Aboriginal Catholics said to Campion, "Can we go and sit in the church so as not to be fined? And provided we remember that what they're doing is wrong and that we believe something else, can we still be a good Catholic?" And Campion said no. And that meant that there became an enormous divide between those who were of one confession and those who were of another. It caused so much trouble over so many generations, did Campion's decision, that there are historians who say, the Vatican has a very long memory, that it influenced the Vatican's attitude to Hitler. Because they tried to stay on the right side of him, because they felt that England would have been a much more amenable place for Catholics if they hadn't really annoyed Queen Elizabeth with a bull of excommunication against her and the rest. Of course, it wasn't helped when they tried to blow up the legislature under James. It wasn't helped at all. But I mean, the Jesuits used to go around saying, no, stay home, don't try and blow up Parliament. But, you know, the gunpowder was there. Anyway, where was I? Yeah. The constables of Burton Constable were Catholic for many generations. Constable lost his case in York and in Hull and failed to make anything stick in Star Chamber. He didn't go for Hilliard in Star Chamber directly, because the only part of the case that would make it viable in Star Chamber was very picky about what they took, was the violent assault on the road to Heddon Jail, and Hilliard had no part in that anyone could prove. And I think that this is a case of personal animosity coming into Star Chamber. I'm sure I've written some more. Yes, I have. Good. Oh, yes. Some of you will not know about the Council of the North. It was more formally the Queen's Council in the North Parts. It met in the King's Manor at York, and it doesn't turn up much in histories. And this is because its records were blown up and destroyed in the siege of York in the Civil War. And history is like that. If your papers survived, you are more important to history than those whose papers didn't survive. And one of the reasons why we know so much about William Cecil, Lord Burleigh, and say how important he was, is that he never, ever threw a piece of paper away. I've been through his archives divided into three places, Hatfield, the British Library and the National Archives. In the National Archives, I found a lost, stolen or strayed notice for a horse. And the horse belonged to Dalton of Hull and was stolen in Myton. And it was in Cecil's papers. So I said, he's used the other side to make a note. So I got it out, sent for it. It was sitting at the time in a salt mine in Cheshire, but I can be quite persistent. Anyway, they got it out for me. And I looked on the back. Absolutely blank. The man never threw anything away. Don't ask me how he got it. I mean, the horse is unlikely to have turned up in London or Hatfield. Okay. The Council of the North acted like a delegated committee of the Privy Council, and it had potentially a lot of power. But they tended not even to cough without first consulting London. They were really, really worried that what they did might be misliked. It had its own court, which was very like the Star Chamber and a Court of Common Pleas combined. It would hear practically anything. And it was busy. We can find traces of stuff that have been at the court of the Council of the North all over the place. It was all local disputes, some of which ended up in Star Chamber. But once again, the court records were lost in the same explosion. So there's a great mass of local history of this area that we don't have. Now, I haven't made a very long paper because I'm hoping that there are going to be loads and loads of people telling me about Tunstall and also asking questions. I love questions. Or disagreements. Yes, sir.
I'm going to make an observation.
Good.
There was a dispute between Hilliard and Constable.
Okay, any more for any more? No? James, you're on.
Round of applause.
Part history talk, part stand-up routine from Helen there. So thank you for the double duty. Thank you very much, all of you, for attending the Heritage Talk. Like I said, these talks take place every other week on Fridays. So the next talk, which is on a pamphlet that some of you might have had access to, I left some around on tables and chairs, is on the 12th of December. It's being held by a gentleman called Colin Cooper. I've not met the bloke yet, but he sounds lovely. And he's doing his talk on East Hull. The title of the talk is East Hull Rediscovered. So if you have any history in East Hull, have any family there, it might be worth coming out to that talk. And that's the last talk before Christmas. We all celebrate Christmas, and then we'll come back with a talk from myself, talking about Gassy Jack, the man born in Hull who survived and thrived on the gold rush and founded, in air quotes, Vancouver, the city I'm from. So connecting Hull to Vancouver. Like I said, this is part of our 600th anniversary, and we've got plenty going on over the course of the year. Our first major Christmas event is happening tomorrow, the Victorian Christmas Market, so hopefully some of you can be around to the Minster for that. It is lunchtime, so please treat yourself to whatever goodies, drinks, foods, whatever you would like at the cafe, because you all deserve it. And as I always say at the end of these talks, the Minster is a very expensive building to maintain, and we want to continue to maintain it. It's a rare sign of continuity in the city of Hull, a city that has seen so much social and structural change, especially over the 21st and 20th centuries. So if you can, please donate to help keep this building alive. It would be very much appreciated. Thank you all, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Cheers.